Good evening. Bonjour et bonsoir à toutes et à tous. And kia ora katoa. My name is Christine Nakamura, Vice President of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada in Toronto. Bienvenue, nau mai, haere mai. And welcome to day one of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. It is my pleasure to be your host and MC for the next 2 days. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that while we are all meeting in a digital global space, the places Canadians call home are the traditional territories of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Tonight, we are hosting you from Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping matters before we start. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website after the mission. To access the event brochure, which includes the full agenda, speaker biographies, and directory of delegates, please click on the Cloud button with the arrow to the right of your screen underneath the chat button, which has the 3 dots, to download your e-brochure. Please post your questions in the chat box on the right side of your screen. Time permitting, we will do our best to respond to as many questions as we can. Audio interpretation is provided by Interactio. To access French language interpretation, please visit the link in the chat box, app.interactio.io in a new browser and use the code capitalized APF Canada. For technical support in English or French during the session, contact events@asiapacific.ca. Our session today will conclude at 9 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Australia EDT, and 3 p.m. New Zealand DT. We are honored tonight to have with us Elder Joanne Okimawininu Delaire, Kei Sheheo, and Senior Advisor, Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation at University of Ryerson, to officially open our first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand with an Indigenous prayer. Elder Delaire, Shadow Hawk woman of the Wolf Clan, is Cree Omushkego, with ancestry from Attawapiskat, Métis, Ontario, and Hull, Quebec. She has dedicated her life work to counseling, advising, and educating on Indigenous concerns and bridging the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people through her business, Healing Works, which was established in 1990. She has been bestowed many awards for her leadership in social work and has been conferred an honorary doctorate of laws, Faculty of Community Services at Ryerson University. Please join me in welcoming Elder Delaire.
Thank you very much, Christine, for inviting me here and to be a part of this. It is such an honor to be in the presence of so many women of creation. As women, we are the creators of life, and we are the creators of life through ideas and seed planting. So I just want to share this prayer, not just, I want to take the word just out of it because it minimizes it. I want to share this prayer with everyone. And to the people of Australia and New Zealand, hello, and thank you very much for inviting us into your space and to believe that we had something that we could share with you. I think it's important that all around the world we remember that we were all Indigenous people at one time, and we all lived of the earth, by the earth, and the natural laws of the earth. And this prayer that I offer reminds us of our responsibilities, our roles, and our connection, our symbiotic connection to all life and to all creation. And women are known to be creators and the caretakers in my people, the caretaker of the water, We're responsible for caring for the water, keeping the water in our prayers, bringing the water to our people and to ceremonies, and because we carry our babies in water. So I'm going to offer this prayer to everyone who's listening. Just listen with your heart, and I hope that it offers you some sense of connection and peace in knowing that who you are and what you do is so important and so valuable to everyone, even people you don't even know. I'm going to be announcing myself in my ancestral language at the beginning, which is Omashkigo, Swampy Cree. I'm going to be saying that my spirit name is Shadow Hawk Woman, that I'm from the Wolf Clan and I'm Omashkigo, and then the rest will be in English. Wache, Ami, Sego, Nit, Kwe, Tenze, hello. Adishna Hasan, Sahakutem, Nakashishanishku, Mahigan Dodam, Omashkigo. First, let us give thanks for this day that's been offered to us. This opportunity to come together with like mind and with open hearts so we can see a newer way of being and a newer way of seeing. Let us give thanks to any ancestors or spirit helpers who would like to come and join us and welcome us into knowing the deeper connection of this web that connects us all around the world. Watch over us, our families, and our loved ones. I also ask at this time that you continue to watch over our brothers and sisters who are on our streets, in our jails, our institutions, hospitals, seniors' homes, shelters, treatment centers. And a special shout out for anyone dealing with health concerns or anyone helping people pass over to the spirit world. And for all those people who help take care of us, a special shout out and watch out for them. Let us give thanks for any plant and animal life that will give of themselves today so that we can move forward. And for all those people who work so very hard behind the scenes, from the farmer to the butcher to the produce people, to get our food ready for us, we thank them. Let us give thanks to Mother Earth and for all that she provides for us, and beg for her forgiveness in how we treat her, and we pray for the healing of her waters. Let us give thanks to Father Sky for watching over us and tending to the star people, while reminding us of the many things we must tend to during a day. To Grandfather Sun, who gives us the energy of life, while reminding us that even too much of something that's good for us can be harmful. And to Grandmother Moon, for when she is full, lights our way in the darkness, and when she is a new moon, reminds us that even in the darkness, the light is still there. We just have to look for it. And she reminds us of the many phases we will go through in a month. Let each of us take from this prayer our connection to all things of this earth, of this universe, and of each other. Let us find those things that connect us, bring us together, not the things that separate us. I so wish and know that this is a meeting of hearts and minds over the next couple of days. And I ask the spirits to guide this and refresh every person partaking in this. And such a big thank you to all those people who've done so much work to make this happen. And I say, Chimigwech, 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 Chimigwech. Aho, all my relations. Hi, hi. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. And I am so looking forward to hearing about this. And I'm hoping I'm going to be able to attend some sessions myself tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elder Delera. That was just lovely. Thank you so much. I'd like to begin now by, first of all, congratulating our Canadian delegates who hail from regions across Canada. Let's give a big hand for all of them. We received a large volume of applications for this particular mission, so you should be exceptionally proud of yourselves for being part of this cohort of such talented and dynamic women entrepreneurs. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Women's Business Mission series, This is the Asia Pacific Foundation's fourth women-only business mission to the Asia Pacific region, and now a bit to Oceania. I'd like to take a few minutes to provide some background on how our foundation got involved in activities to advance the feminist agenda. Since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took office in 2015, his government was clear about their dual efforts. One, to grow Canada's economy through international trade diversification, and two, to advance gender equality and women's economic empowerment. Why? Like Australia and New Zealand, SMEs make up the majority of our businesses in Canada at 99.7%. Australia and New Zealand register over 99% as well. However, Canada lags behind Australia and New Zealand, with only 15.6% of total SMEs, or small and medium-sized enterprises, being women-owned, while Australia and New Zealand are doing much better at 34% and 44% respectively pre-pandemic. So by increasing the number of women-owned businesses in Canada and facilitating business growth through expansion into international markets, the government aims to grow the economy. Previous governments in Canada have made attempts to implement a number of policies to advance gender equality, but in my view, with limited success. I've been through many governments, so I can say this, but this time I sincerely thought that the government was serious about enabling the feminist agenda. This possibility inspired our team to develop a strategy in support of government priorities to grow Canada's economy by helping women's small and medium-sized enterprises to scale up through access to dynamic markets in the Asia-Pacific region. From 2017 to 2018, our team organized a series of roundtables across Canada with over 300 women in business to determine the obstacles preventing women SMEs who have interest but are unable, unwilling, or just afraid to diversify into markets beyond North America. A message we heard repeatedly from participants was that trade missions dedicated to women entrepreneurs, led by organizations that understand the destination markets, would encourage them to venture into unknown territories, such as the growth markets in Asia. They said that not having to compete against male counterparts on a trade mission in traditionally male-dominated markets would be incentive enough to consider taking part. So in April 2019, we led the first pilot mission, the Canadian Women-Only Business Mission to Japan, with a delegation of 34 members, 17 of whom were women entrepreneurs, and the rest, women business and thought leaders from across Canada. The mission was deemed a resounding success, with many business deals, partnerships, and collaborations resulting from the business-to-business meetings arranged for the delegates. The results led to our foundation being generously funded by the Government of Canada to organize and lead 4 more missions to the region from 2019 to 2023. After Japan, the pandemic hit, which required us to pivot to virtual and hybrid model missions. In 2020, we successfully led the first Canadian virtual trade mission dedicated to women entrepreneurs to South Korea. And in March 2021, we safely concluded a hybrid mission to Taiwan with our Taiwanese participants convening in a large convention hall in Taipei. In preparation for missions, our team arranges pre-mission briefings with experts on market intelligence, geopolitical concerns, culture, and business protocol to amplify prospects for success for our women entrepreneurs. We are monitoring outcomes from all of our missions concluded so far, and I am pleased to say that positive results are mounting, with negotiations still ongoing, even some from the mission to Japan. In addition to the business partnerships being achieved by these missions, a powerful network of women leaders and entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad is emerging, which continues to grow with each and every mission. To ensure the network endures, we launched CanWin, the Canadian Women's International Network, in May 2021 to officially connect all the women we engaged to date through our dialogue series and missions to Asia. Business and thought leaders, delegates, and other interested women SMEs, and gender equality organizations are uniting together to create an ecosystem to advance economic equality and empower Canadian women in business through engagement with Asia. CanWin welcomes international women in business to work together to minimize barriers disproportionately affecting women entrepreneurs, with the aim of facilitating the achievement of their full potential. But more on the CanWin tomorrow when the inaugural chair, Dr. Lois Nahirny, addresses you. Well, enough on the context. In the next 2 days, we will be featuring some of the top women business leaders and entrepreneurs from Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, who will share with you their journeys to success and some advice on how to best seize opportunities available. So it is now my great pleasure to call upon the chair of the first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand and vice chair of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's board, Ms. Lisa DeWilde, for welcome remarks and to read a very special message from Her Excellency Mary May Simon, Governor-General of Canada. But please refer to the biographies of all speakers that are in your electronic program. And if you haven't done so already, please download your e-brochure by clicking the cloud button on the extreme right of your screen under the chat button. Lisa, welcome and over to you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Good morning to our friends in Australia. Good afternoon to our friends in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Good evening to our mission delegates, guests across Canada. And hello and welcome to guests joining us from other parts of the world. Bonjour et bienvenue à tous et à toutes. Kia ora tātou, now me, haere me. As chair of this mission and vice chair of the board of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all participants, near and far, to this very first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. For those who do not know the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, we are a not-for-profit organization established by an act of the Canadian Parliament in 1984, with a mandate to focus on Canada's relations with the Asia Pacific region. Our mission is to be a catalyst for Canada's engagement with Asia and Asia's bridge to Canada. What a terrific opportunity this virtual mission provides to be a catalyst for meaningful economic, business, and policy engagement between and among Canada, Australia, and New Zealand by creating bridges between women leaders and entrepreneurs. It's also an important opportunity to highlight the value of Indigenous economies and the creativity, drive, and success of talented Indigenous women business owners and leaders. This unique mission has attracted attention from a broad cross-section of Canada's diverse population and support from Canadian leaders at the highest level. I am deeply honored to convey to all in attendance today a special message from Her Excellency Mary May Simon, Governor-General of Canada, on the occasion of the first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. Her Excellency wants to convey to you the following message. At a time when our society is facing unprecedented challenges, from the pandemic to climate change to food insecurity, it is vital that we work closely together to solve the world's most pressing problems quickly. Economic development is certainly part of the solution. I am therefore pleased to extend my warmest greetings to everyone taking part in this event organized by the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada in partnership with SHIO and Indigenous. Over the next 2 days, you will explore many fields such as science, technology, engineering, and other sectors that are traditionally underrepresented by women, including within Indigenous communities. You will learn more about technological innovations in the areas of infrastructure, smart cities, and health technologies. And you will have opportunities to network with your counterparts and share best practices and economic outlooks that incorporate more sustainable systems. I hope that these discussions prove fruitful and wish you every success during this inaugural women-only virtual business mission, unquote. Thank you to everybody. Merci tout le monde. Tēnā koutou katoa.
So much, Lisa, for this lovely message from the Governor General and your warm words of welcome. Now I'd like to invite the Mission Vice Chair and Chancellor of Ryerson University, Ms. Janice Fukakusa, to read a statement from the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Janice, please take the mic.
Thank you, Christine, and congratulations again to the talented group of Canadian women, business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs who have been selected as delegates on this mission. It's your passion and drive that is motivating our discussions and connection over these next 2 days. And I'm delighted to serve as your Vice Chair of the Asia Pacific Foundation Canada's Women-Only Business Mission Series that's supported by the Government of Canada through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy. As Christine said before, this mission is the third virtual mission that we've all been on, and they were all highly successful. And that was after the first in-person mission we had in Japan, where we took a delegation of 34 members to go there and do the same thing that we're doing virtually today and tomorrow. Our three countries share strong political, cultural, and economic ties, and we work together frequently with common purpose in many international groups, and like the CPTPP, or the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade agreement with 11 signatories from both sides of the Pacific, accounting for about 15% of global GDP. And I'm sure that as economic relationships between us all get stronger, they will grow even stronger as our economies and borders gradually reopen to travelers from countries with high COVID vaccination rates. So I welcome you all, and I wish you all a successful mission. It now gives me great pleasure to share a message from Canada's Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, who has also conveyed his strong support for our work promoting women's economic empowerment through this mission. I'll now share his statement. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the first Canadian women-only business mission to Australia and New Zealand, hosted by the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada in partnership with SheEO and with support from Indigenous. As APF Canada's fourth women's business mission to Asia Pacific, this mission will bring together diverse Canadian women entrepreneurs, including a number representing the Indigenous communities across Canada, with businesses from Australia and New Zealand to promote gender-inclusive trade, support SMEs, and catalyze international partnerships between Canadian companies and foreign markets. As you have heard, the mission chair is Lisa DeWild, and I am proud to be the vice chair of this mission. As trade relations continue to expand between our countries, it's vital to take initiatives such as this Women's Only Business Mission to ensure we are empowering women and advancing gender parity. Only then can we achieve balanced, equitable growth that it works for everyone. This past year, we faced significant challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to take this opportunity to thank APF Canada for all of their hard work in organizing this important initiative, to all of those that have shown their support. Please accept my best wishes for a successful virtual trade mission. Thank you, merci, and tēnā koutou.
Very much, Janice, for those lovely words and remarks, as well as the special statement from the Prime Minister. I now invite Ms. Sarah Wilshaw of Post Ren, former colleague, but now the Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Trade Commissioner to make remarks and introduce the Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, the Honourable Mary Ng. Sarah, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christine. It is great to be here. It is wonderful to hear the supportive words of our Governor General and our Prime Minister encouraging us in our work. Good evening, good morning, everyone. Bonjour, kia ora. I'm really excited to join you for this virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. And thank you so much to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada and to SheEO for organizing this event with the support of IndigiX and other supporters and sponsors. Working together like this, we really can and we do make a huge difference. And it's so exciting to see the level of interest in these women-led business missions. We know that our economies are stronger and supply chains are more resilient when we ensure that there is space for everyone, especially for women and Indigenous women in international trade. One of the Government of Canada's priorities is to help both women and Indigenous-owned businesses, as well as other underrepresented groups, to expand into new markets and to be successful on the global stage. En tant que délégué commercial en chef du Canada, je sais qu'il est important pour les entreprises d'avoir un endroit où elles peuvent trouver de l'aide pour se développer à l'étranger. Our Trade Commissioner Service, the TCS, brings expert market knowledge, local contacts, troubleshooting expertise, incredible networks, and on-the-ground supports that are invaluable to Canadian companies. We have trade commissioners ready to work with you in more than 160 cities around the world and across Canada, and we've already helped so many women entrepreneurs to succeed abroad. We know that Canadian businesses have what it takes to compete out there in the world and to create growth and prosperity at home. And I'll give you an example. Businesses like British Columbia's Agents of Discovery that created an app that acts like a personal tour guide in parks, museums, and zoos around the world. And with funding from the Trade Commissioner Service's Can Export program, that company traveled to Australia to promote their app. And now Brisbane City Council uses the app to enhance visitor experiences in the city's botanical gardens and boondoggle wetlands. So that's just one example. Les entreprises appartenant à des femmes jouent un rôle important dans l'économie canadienne et le gouvernement du Canada fera tout ce qu'il peut pour les soutenir. Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, who you'll hear from today, is also doing everything she can to support Canadian companies. And just last week, she met with Minister Nanaina Mahuta of New Zealand, who was here in Ottawa. And they talked about the close ties between Canada and New Zealand and shared all kinds of ideas about enhancing support to women and Indigenous peoples. So without further ado, I'm very pleased and honored to introduce an inspiring and encouraging video message direct from Mary Ng, Canada's Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development. Thank you so much and all the best for a great event.
Good evening, everyone in Canada. Bonsoir tout le monde. And a warm welcome to all of our friends joining us online from Australia and New Zealand, where it's already Thursday. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. For those of us who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, it's important to recognize that Indigenous peoples were here long before us and that we all have a role to play in reconciliation. I'm glad that technology allows me to share a few words with everyone attending this historic all-women business mission, organized by the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada and SheEO with the support of IndigiX. This is the fourth APF Canada mission that I've been involved in, and I know that the next 2 days are anything like the missions to Japan in 2019, to South Korea in 2020, and Taiwan earlier this year, which gathered together more than 1,000 participants. This is going to be a massive success. APF Canada, SheEO, and IndigiX have done such a fantastic job in supporting more women to export. That work now is more important than ever, given the toll that the pandemic has taken on women in the economy. And while we're not yet clear out of the pandemic, the future is looking brighter. With that brighter future comes the need to explore the many ways that we can build back better and to create an even more resilient future. For me, there are two crucial components in accomplishing this. The first is that we must build a more inclusive economy by supporting women of all backgrounds. Canada and New Zealand's collaboration through the Global Trade and Gender Agreement is one way that we're doing this. This is not only the right thing to do, but it makes economic sense. By supporting women's economic advancement, we know we can add up to $150 billion to the Canadian economy and $12 trillion to global growth. The second piece is that we must support Canadian businesses to scale up and to access new dynamic markets, such as those in Australia and in New Zealand. Let me give you an example. Businesses such as Vancouver-based Meta Optima, a digital health company that specializes in dermatology and skincare, is now thriving in Australia, due in part to the support of Canada's Trade Commissioner Service. Thanks to their innovation and hard work, Meta Optima signed an agreement with Australia's Sonic Healthcare to use its Derm Engine software in Sonic's 35 Australian skin cancer centers. I can't think of a more worthwhile type of global collaboration than to fighting cancer. Today's business mission is a perfect opportunity to create even more of these types of partnerships for the benefit of Canadians, Australians, and New Zealanders alike. Economic growth in each of our countries is only strengthened through our membership in trade agreements like the CPTPP. Our shared commitment to rules-based international trade will ensure strong, inclusive, sustainable shared recoveries across our countries. Before you get started with the first session, I leave you with two thoughts. First, as it is for Australia and New Zealand, the economic progress of Indigenous peoples and other underrepresented peoples is a key priority for our government. So to all of the amazing Indigenous women entrepreneurs participating today, thank you. Thank you for being here and for forging connections for future collaboration that will benefit your communities, your countries, and indeed the global economy. The ideas that you will share and the leadership that you have shown represent the diversity of thought and talent that is crucial to truly inclusive and successful economies. And second, knowing that everyone is here to build even more bridges and to deepen the relationship between our countries, it is just so inspiring. I can't wait to hear about your journeys and the incredible collaborations and contributions that come from this mission. And until then, I look forward to hearing back from you, but thank you. Now
Well, we have to all be very thankful for Minister Ng's unrelenting efforts to help women entrepreneurs grow their businesses. So we are very, very grateful for her support. Well, our power panel for the session Australia and New Zealand Growth Opportunities for Women SMEs are getting ready. We'll take a very short break and a health break. So please return promptly at 7:40 so that you don't miss any of the remarks from our dynamic business leaders. Okay, see you in a few minutes.
The Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, Canada's leading organization for research, analysis, and consultation on Canada-Asia relations. Our mission: to act as Canada's catalyst for engagement with Asia and Asia's bridge to Canada. For more than 35 years, our research has provided high-quality, relevant, and timely information, insights, and perspectives on Canada-Asia relations. With offices in Vancouver and Toronto, the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada is dedicated to strengthening trans-Pacific ties with a focus on 7 themes: trade and investment, regional security, digital technologies, surveys and polling, sustainable development, domestic networks, and Asia competency. We provide actionable policy advice and business intelligence tools for stakeholders at home and across the Asia Pacific. Join the conversation and subscribe to Asia Watch, our free news service, by visiting the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada at www.asiapacific.ca.
Fondation Asie-Pacifique du Canada est une des organisations les plus importantes du Canada en matière de recherche, d'analyse et de consultation sur les relations entre le Canada et l'Asie. Notre mission est d'agir en tant que catalyseur des relations entre le Canada et l'Asie et servir de passerelle entre l'Asie et le Canada. Depuis plus de 35 ans, nous offrons des recherches de qualité, pertinentes, des informations opportunes, des idées et perspectives dans le cadre des relations entre le Canada et l'Asie. Avec nos bureaux à Vancouver et Toronto, la Fondation Asie-Pacifique du Canada se consacre au renforcement des liens transpacifiques en mettant l'accent sur 7 thèmes: le commerce et l'investissement, la sécurité régionale, les technologies numériques, les sondages et statistiques, le développement durable, les réseaux intérieurs et l'expertise de l'Asie. Nous offrons des conseils quant aux politiques et des outils de renseignement d'affaires pour les parties prenantes du pays et au-delà de l'Asie du Pacifique. Joignez-vous à la discussion en vous abonnant à Asia Watch, notre service gratuit, en visitant le site web de la Fondation Asie-Pacifique du Canada au asiapacific.ca.
Welcome back, everyone. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Ms. Vicki Saunders, founder of SheEO, our partner for this first Canadian women-only virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. We're very grateful for the strong support that Vicki and her team at SheEO have provided to this mission. I should mention that SheEO just concluded a very successful 2-day trade event with Australia and New Zealand yesterday, where delegates took part in their inspiring activities. SheEO's inclusivity and radical generosity never stops to amaze us. Vicki will introduce the luminaries on this panel and moderate what promises to be a rich and enlightening discussion. So, Vicki, over to you.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much. Really happy to be here. I feel like I've been spending lots of time down under this week. We've had 2 wonderful days talking trade, supply chain, all the things. It's been really exciting. This is an amazing group of people. We are about to have a panel where you're going to hear really unique experiences from incredible, successful entrepreneurs, business owners, influencers, and we're going to talk about opportunities to collaborate and look for strategies that can help you in your trade. So I would like to invite up Amanda Healy, the CEO of Warakai and Finfin, Tracy Hopapa, the chair of Federation of Maori Authorities, Teresa Gattung, who can't just have one title, she has like way too many titles to read out, involved in so many things, and Leslie Gillespie, co-founder of Baker's Delight. So welcome, everyone. Is Teresa with us? No. Okay. All right. Well, we will get started, and if she shows up, we'll get her up on stage. So hello, Amanda and Leslie. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Vicki.
Excellent.
Good morning from beautiful Perth in Western Australia.
Wonderful. We have the 2 Aussies with us. This is excellent. So if Tracy and Teresa show up, we'll have them just pulled up on stage. But why don't we get started? And let's share about a 5-minute sort of introduction. Amanda, I wonder if you would start giving us a bit of your story, sharing a little bit about your background and what brings you here.
Sure. Kaya. Kaya Wanju, which is hello in the language of the local people, the Wajak Noongar people here in Western Australia. I myself am a Wonnarua Darkinjung woman from the east coast of Australia, but I've spent most of my life here in Western Australia. And Western Australia is the mining province of Australia, really, massive amount of mining here. So my history is actually in the mining industry. many years working for the big miners. I spent a few years in Canada myself, up in Yellowknife, working on the diamond fields up there. So that was in the 1990s. On my return to Australia, I opened up a small business, which has dramatically become a very large business. So we are a maintenance services business into the mining sector, and we recently signed a $350 million agreement with one of the large mining companies here. So we've got some 600 employees and maintain a 20% involvement of Aboriginal people. So I employ roughly, of the 600 people, about 150 Aboriginal people here in Western Australia, developing their skills in the mining industry. I also, in 2014, when I started talking at various supply chain opportunities, recognised a very big gap in the market, that there was a very poor representation of authentic Aboriginal products in our market. So in 2014, I started Curican, which is a social enterprise, and we digitally print authentic Aboriginal art onto luxury fabrics and turn them into clothing. And if you look in the background there, you'll see a couple of pieces of mine. So that's a lot of fun, that one. And very interesting. The fashion industry is incredibly interesting and challenging environment to work in, but as I said, nonetheless fun. And I love it because it's consistently and constantly changing the view of our people through the medium of fashion, and changing people's views of who we are and what we do. So that makes me incredibly proud, and it also makes me incredibly proud that we are able to get some funds back to communities that we work with.
That's great. And are you exporting that outside of Australia?
Yeah, we do. We regularly sell into Europe. The United States has been quite a big market. It just seems to go through little phases. It's sort of weird, unrelated. I might sell, say, some clothes into Canada, usually one-offs, not like I'm not big enough to be exporting large numbers of clothing to your big, Hudson's Bay or something like that. The Bay, sorry, I should say, it's probably called these days. But, we send individual sales all the time to the USA and also across Europe.
Great. I just also want to be in awe of how women are running businesses. So you've got mining services with $350 million contracts and fashion. All that's connected together, which is
yes. I know. It was sort of like it sort of feels like I'm a little bit crazy mad sometimes doing all this stuff. But as I said, it's a lot of fun. It doesn't leave me very much spare time, but it means that when I do have spare time, I very much enjoy it.
Nice. Well, thank you for that start. And we'll come back with lots of other questions. But Leslie, would you like to go next and tell us a little bit about your business and about you?
Well, thanks, Vicky. Well, a little bit about my business, our business. It's a family business. It's they're bakeries, and we started in 1980 in suburban Melbourne, Hawthorne, and we called it Baker's Delight, and it took off incredibly well. And we were able to expand across Australia, using a franchise model. We stumbled along in the first few years trying to do everything ourselves, but once we went into the franchise model in the late 80s, we certainly could expand, and it went very well. And in the late 90s, we expanded into New Zealand, and where we were still there. And in the early 2000s, we looked at further expansion and looking at a number of criteria. Canada absolutely came up trumps as the best country in which to expand, and we opened our first bakery in suburban Vancouver at Edgemont in 2003, and we're now across provinces and doing really well. So we're absolutely thrilled. Not only do the New Zealanders love our bread, but so do the Canadians.
That's excellent. And did you, on the franchise, can we just go into the franchise bit for a second?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why you picked that approach.
Well, we went from 1 to 2 to 3. We had a very supportive bank manager who could see the little entity, the businesses were profitable. Yes, you'd like to set up another one, or yes, you'd like to buy another one. And we were able to do that. But as we went along, they each became less and less profitable. They were still profitable, but less and less profitable. And I think it was we'd opened about 15, and my husband and I looked at each other and said, well, we can see a trend here and it's not the trend we want. And our businesses function when there's a sense of ownership at each and every bakery. And it was a way for us to get that at each and every bakery. It was an interesting way, because initially no one wanted, who would want to invest with 30-something-year-old, people, and we worked out a way where we could get people to invest in our business. But it was franchising was our quantum leap. It was great for us.
That's great. Okay, Teresa, you've got a very varied background. Tell us your story.
So kia ora, everyone. I'm on a bit time delay here, so I'm seeing myself a bit up there. But anyway, I'm coming to you from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm coming to you from the Bay of Plenty, which is the land of Te Arawa, an iwi of New Zealand, of which there are many iwi, but that's where I was brought up, and so this feels like my taringa waiwai, which is the Māori word for where my bones will be laid, where I feel most at home. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. When I left university, there wasn't such a thing, and so I joined the great corporate milieu and got to the top in that. And when I stopped that in my mid-40s, someone said to me she'd be an entrepreneur, and I said, well, I don't think I am. But I became one accidentally when a young woman, Sarah Robinson, asked me to join her in a business she was setting up. That business, My Food Bag, that she set up with her and her husband, revolutionised dinner and women's life in New Zealand, because it was the first meal kit company in New Zealand. And at about the same time as it launched in North America, a similar sort of thing. And so that's how I became an entrepreneur, and that led me to see the real barriers that were female entrepreneurs. And then I heard Vicky speak at conference, a women's conference in the US. And that led me to SheO and with Vicky bringing it to New Zealand to support, to fund, to finance women entrepreneurs doing it on their own terms. And that's led me to reshape my whole life around a gender lens. I now only do gender lens investing and gender lens charitable support. And we've been very successful with My Food Bag. And about 18 months ago, we decided to start another company with an even bigger goal. And so now I'm chair and investor, and James and Celia Robinson are the CEOs of Tent Health, which really wants to revolutionise healthcare in New Zealand and make it more equitable for all. And so this is digital. It's like a doctor in your phone, digital, but also with clinics as well. And that's just we've just got such a big vision about what we're doing there. So I'm still in the game, so to speak, but I spend a lot of time helping other women who are in the game, and I constantly have to balance, my own health and well-being with the change I'm trying to create in the world. So, but I hugely admire Vicky, want to support what she's doing, think that she's working at such a systems level to bring change. And I truly believe that Canada and New Zealand, and to some extent Australia, I honestly don't think quite as much, but we are 3 countries where women can make a real difference, can lead the conversation, which in the Māori phrase is korero, which is a very nice feeling about it, and can actually point a path to the future. So I think New Zealand is ahead of Australia in honouring our Indigenous people, but I think all 3 countries actually are ahead of a lot of other places in terms of actually understanding, unleashing the power of women.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I mean, I'd like to just go that to you, Amanda, and ask you. So, what we witness with the Maori population and the focus on the economy in New Zealand. Can you talk a little bit about what you're noticing with the Aboriginal economy? This focus on more inclusive economies that we heard earlier. It's a real focus in Canada. What are you noticing from a trend perspective in Australia around this?
So, yes, I agree with the comments of Teresa. Australia is, I think, the only country on earth that doesn't have a treaty with its Indigenous people, which is frightening still after all these years, 250 years later. We still suffer dramatically from racism and exclusion. Having said all that, I do believe our Indigenous women are working incredibly hard to change that. So we're seeing emerging leaders everywhere throughout the country in Aboriginal communities, which is making a difference to our own community. It's hard to be heard in an environment such as we have in Australia at the moment, where we don't have any recognition. It is... it's one of those things that we continue to work on and continue to seek support on in terms of, like some form of recognition and treaty that would make a big difference to that. But yeah, like my experiences in Canada and New Zealand, the work that you guys are doing is remarkable and far ahead of us in terms of recognition in, your communities. And nonetheless, our women, I work here with a group here in Western Australia that have a business hub which has developed small businesses, and they're working with some 280 businesses here in Perth alone. And of those, I think about 60% are female-led, which is, remarkable. And as you point out, it's women that will change the world for sure.
And in Aboriginal businesses, I was a bit struck. I think I know this, but when I heard Christine say it at the beginning as well, that only 15% of SMEs in Canada are women-led, and it's 34 and 44% in Australia and New Zealand. Is it the same in the Aboriginal community, Amanda?
No, I think quite the opposite. We're seeing quite the opposite here, that it tends to be the women who are... Well, our societies traditionally were quite matriarchal and strongly, women-focused. So I think that we're starting to see that play out a lot here. The women are leading, not to say that the men aren't participating, but it just seems to be there's a greater focus on women. Our focus tends to be more future generations and trying to set things up for our kids and grandkids and blah, 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 to stabilise them in their futures. And I think that is what's driving a lot of us. A lot of us drive for community and for family.
And Leslie, when you were getting started and looking at do you have a breakdown of your franchisee owners and what the share balance looks like there?
Yes, I do. The vast majority, and this is off the top of my head, but when I look, the vast majority are couples, and they'll be a husband and wife team and they are, they're equal partners in the business. But we always need what can I say? We have one franchisee. It's the main franchisee. And historically, bread baking in Australia was a very male, because it was hard, dirty. It still is hard, dirty, heavy work, but particularly heavy work, very male dominated. But over the years, our franchisee, our main franchisee, has the percentage of women has increased. And when we went into Canada, which doesn't have that history, it's interesting because our franchisee numbers, our main franchisee at each bakery, are 50-50.
Ah, interesting.
So it is. It's interesting. It's like anything that you get parity. Sometimes it's takes a while. You know, if you come from an industry, and when we still see it, you know, you go into any what they're called elementary schools, primary schools, and there is an incredible gender imbalance. When you look at the lower primary teachers, they are mostly women, but it's gradually changing. So it just takes time. You know, it just takes time.
Yeah, this whole takes time thing is something we have to like figure out how to hack.
Well, I've seen it. It's been over since 1980. I mean, you could say it's 41 years.
Yeah.
But it's just bit by bit, as long as women have the choice, and that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah. Right. Teresa, you recently have set up a chair for women's entrepreneurship in New Zealand. Can you tell us a little bit about the sort of scope of how you think about this, having lots of experience in corporate and then doing lots of entrepreneurship and being an investor? What approach are you taking now around the systems level of this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, how do we join everything up that already exists? You know, like she in New Zealand with the angel investment funds, Archangels. I know Kirsty Reynolds is on this call, so Icehouse Ventures, Archangel, some of the major funds are now launching women-only founder funds. So
Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to get her. Yeah, we'll get her. She'll come back again. I think they're going to go with no video for a bit. Amanda, have you seen, I mean, coming from the mining industry, tell us a little bit about your experience being in that space for some time and what you're noticing around any sort of gender equality or movement in this direction.
Yeah, it's mining is such an interesting space. I started working in the mining industry in the 1980s, so a very, very different time. And I guess there was some issues, actually significant issues about how women were treated and how we were promoted in the industry in terms of, you know, like women were considered to be office workers in those days, and, you know, only the real men got to do the real jobs, and there certainly was no very, very little representation in management and supervision in those days. And we're starting to see times change quite rapidly in terms of, so very recently there's been a number of issues in the industry in relation to sexual harassment of women in the industry, which, you know, like it's been a long time since I've been living, so a number of years, so 15, 20 years since I was living on a remote community that was focused on mining. And it was very common in the 80s and 90s to find women harassed to such a point that they left the industry. The industry itself is taking huge steps in changing those sorts of things. We are seeing many women in management roles, in key management roles, you know, like managing mines and managing massive facilities and having responsibilities for multi-million-dollar mines and assets, which is fantastic to see. All, you know, very bright, energetic, enthusiastic women appearing all over the place. We're starting to see Indigenous women appearing in senior roles and management roles across the mining industry, which is so wonderful. And it changes, like it just changes the whole culture of a whole industry, which is what is the most wonderful thing of all to see, to be honest.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. And it's time, by the way, you know, yes. Well past time, but very interesting to see.
That's great. We will all be better for it. So may there be lots more. Leslie, we just had a question come in, which says, I'm really struck by your success in Canada, given the presence of other large baked good firms operating here. Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs looking to expand into highly competitive markets? What's your secret sauce?
Interestingly, our point of difference is that we bake everything fresh on site, whereas when most of our competitors in Canada, they make it off-site in a factory and it's delivered, and we stick to basically bread-based or, you know, bread or bread-related products. And when we went into Canada, there was nothing really like us in Canada. People tended to buy their bread when they went to the local supermarket. But we thought that we could succeed in Canada because there were a large number of small specialty food retailers where people would go to a specialist produce store or a specialist butcher and what have you. And so we thought, well, if there's a market there for specialist food retailers, then we would fit under that umbrella. So our special sauce is just to stick to our knitting, as the old saying goes. I don't know if it's a Canadian expression.
Yes. Yeah.
Stick to your knitting. We have a system, a way of doing. We have a limited product range, but our aim is to produce wonderful, fresh, healthy bread for families across Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And we make and bake everything on site.
And did you notice?
That's the secret sauce.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, were there regulatory differences between New Zealand and Canada around this?
There's regulatory differences, province to province in Canada, and state by state in Australia. Fortunately, New Zealand is just New Zealand, but they're all different. There are regulatory. The differences are there, but you just work around them. Not work, you work with them. So you make sure that what you have to do in Ontario is slightly different to BC, but you work with them, and you work around the businesses. And I found them both when we went into Canada. We used advisors like KPMG and good lawyers, and they were able to help us navigate. And we were able to set up successfully. Similarly, when we went into New Zealand.
This is one of the things we did at a trade event the last couple of nights, and one of the key things over and over that we were trying to get across is there are all kinds of people out there to help you with this. So Don't think that you have to figure out everything yourself. There's lots of experts. There's lots of folks. It doesn't have to be expensive. In Canada, we have the Trade Commissioner Services. We have Austrade. And other state by state focus areas, and NZTE is phenomenal in New Zealand. So there's lots of people to help you. So if you're listening to this, there are resources out there, and we'll be sharing some of those in the chat. Teresa, do we have you back?
Yeah, well, can you hear me? I can see and hear you fine. Okay, so I'll just carry on. Doesn't matter, you can't see me. I'm trying to take a selfie. That's not working either. Nearly got a selfie of my garden, but anyway. So the last your question is the two things that really I thought were important during lockdown, when I thought, how can I make a significant difference with my money and my skills and my energy in this next decade, was one thing I'm already doing, as you know, Vicky, being part of joining everything up, joining up the women of similar goodwill and similar intent, all working in individual ways. So I think that's important in whatever country, to join up. There are women's groups, women's business groups, women for purpose and for profit groups of one sort or another, women investments. So to join up the existing ecosystem can make a profound difference. But in particular, I want to do what you were touching on before, accelerate things. Mm-hmm. So my idea was really that, there's so much that women can share with each other. I did a panel yesterday for Global Women, an entrepreneurs panel, and had several women on it, each with different businesses, some tech, some Indigenous storytelling, different businesses, but so much learning can come from that. But, we've all learned the hard way. And some of us had good male mentors to understand balance sheets and not sell our companies too quickly and all those sorts of things. And others made mistakes and only got it right on their second go. And, of course, New Zealand's got a tall poppy syndrome. You don't always get a second go. If you're a failed female founder, you're not going to get a second go. So my idea was to inaugurate a chair of women in entrepreneurship, so that both entrepreneurship and the business school for women would be seen as a degree course. Secondly, it would be courses that women who are doing arts or sciences or other things could come and take without being in business school, because eventually we're all going to be entrepreneurs. That's the way that life is going to go. And finally, it was New Zealand's are big enough to do things, but also small enough and connected enough to a lot of my peers that successful female entrepreneurs could come and present. They could be part of the ecosystem, and then there would be interns from the degree going and working for female founders. So that's it. That's the sort of the picture or scope, and answer to your question.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to talk about the joining up, because I think in the past, certainly for me, I just see so much conditioning and so much of a narrative around you have to do everything alone. You have to figure everything out by yourself. A lot of women entrepreneurs we hear in every country that we go to feel so isolated and are lacking in networks. And put our heads down and like sit in a corner trying to figure out how to do it. That would be me in the early days. The biggest lesson certainly that I've learned is that together it's so much easier. And getting into communities together, especially now, and like the business strategy of the day is get really clear on your core competencies and then surround yourself with people who have all of the other skills. So I think it's very, very prescient, obviously, for the times. But what's amazing about New Zealand, Teresa, and watching you is pulling these groups together. It's a small enough place where people know each other, and you can actually really show how when you come together, we can all outperform and support one another. So I'm really grateful for your leadership on that. We have a question for you, Amanda, around how do you support and source Indigenous peoples and other diverse groups in employment and as suppliers?
Yeah, that's becoming increasingly easier. Thank you. And before I comment on that, thank you so much for that question. I just want to support Leslie's claim about Baker's Delight. I used to live behind a bakery, like in the street right behind a bakery, and it shows on my hips, like behind a Baker's Delight bakery. That's from about 4 o'clock in the morning. The smells would waft into my house, which was just divine. I had to move eventually, otherwise I was like the house. So just on sourcing suppliers here, so I guess probably the first point would be sourcing employees. We don't. Aboriginal people in Australia, Indigenous people in Australia tend not to operate in the mainstream. So you have to build networks that are community-based rather than, go to seek or, though that is changing, but it is word of mouth is a very big motivator and methodology to find employees, as it is with businesses. For us in the supply chain, we came to recognise a couple of years ago, which what that big business doesn't seem to grasp just yet in Australia, is that you actually have to develop your own supply chain. Mm-hmm. So we work with other Aboriginal businesses, small businesses here, and develop them and help them understand working in the industry. So for the moment, we've got two businesses on, both electrical. So we use electrical businesses as a very big support. Mine's a mechanical business. So we actively work with those guys and help them understand the planning methodology, all sorts of means of doing business in the mining industry. In fashion, we're a really small group here in Australia. I think there's only probably about 8, 10 maybe businesses, though I see lots developing all the time, which is awesome. And social media has made a huge difference to our ability to connect. So there's lots of pages, or I guess, or groups on Facebook and Instagram where we all work together and show each other our wares and share our stories and share our information. And so that's been a wonderful thing for developing relationships with other businesses and individuals, actually.
And is it design of the clothing or designs on pre-existing?
So for me, what I do is actually print onto fabrics, and then I make them here in Boorloo, which is the first name of Perth. So we, like I make here in Australia. as the business grows, I think that's going to be harder and harder to do, just simply because of population and skills at the moment here in Australia. But I would really love to find out. My plan in the not too distant future, the next 5 years, is to try and work with our sewing group here in Western Australia or in Australia that consist exclusively of Indigenous people. So that's keep your eye out for that. All Indigenous made in Australia.
We do. Someone's asking, can we see some designs? And I think so. Somebody just put the link into the chat, which is very exciting. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
So in Teresa, one of the ventures in New Zealand, Kiri Nathan, is also doing similar, wanting to be one of the first fashion brands focused and owned by an Indigenous entrepreneur. Have you, in your conversations with Kiri, and has that helped her as she's expanding globally? At this moment in time, it seems like there's quite a bit of activism around really understanding Indigenous approaches to business.
Vicky, I don't know whether that's helped her or not. I think Kiri will be finishing her immersion Te Reo course this week and sort of rejoining outside her family bubble. But I have noticed really, I read Anne Wilson-Schaef's book 3 or 4 years ago, and she was a feminist from 30 years ago, and she'd been quiet and not writing for decades, and then she wrote this book. It was so powerful. It was about this is before the pandemic. Changing the world will only come when we integrate women's wisdom with Indigenous wisdom with nature. It was like this is what has to happen. And I remember at the time being struck by how profound that was. And what I see all around me now is absolutely people are getting that. So the Global Women Corporate Partners, for example, while they're not done on gender, they're all about how can we increase our capability in terms of ethnic diversity and cultural capability. And that's really just coming apace. And the Indigenous women's Indigenous women have always reached out to each other globally. Leonie Pihama talked about that at World Women 2017 when you were a keynote speaker as well. But it feels to me now that spade work that they've done on behalf of all of us is going to start to pay off. So I think that one of the thoughts I had in terms of the trade mission was that the Indigenous Women's Networks could be a very good way to actually support entrepreneurs from Canada coming to Australia and New Zealand, because I think that's a sisterhood that's deeply committed to doing things in a certain way that will benefit all of us while supporting each other. So I can't really answer your question exactly, but it feels to me like it absolutely is.
It's interesting. We were, I know we sort of have this focus in the world of like technology equals innovation, and we keep talking about tech over and over. And as I was reading Tyson Yunkaporta's book on Sand Talk, he talks about peace technologies and social technologies and justice technologies coming from Indigenous cultures. And one of the ventures that we just funded in Australia is focused on mental health. And they have this approach that they've been taking in Aboriginal communities around mental health. And when she took this idea to one of the academic institutions, they said, well, where's the evidence? And she said, we have 60,000 years of evidence. We're the oldest civilization here. So we're starting to see really wonderful surfacing of Indigenous wisdom that we all need, of how we can actually live together. This is something that we can absolutely learn from the space. And we just got a note in the chat here. I don't know if you're watching, Amanda, that someone's going to go on and buy a jumpsuit because they just went on look, which is really great. Leslie, you've moved to another place. Are you?
I had my computer was running out of gas, so I had to move to another place to get some electricity.
That's great. Well, thank you for the tour. We appreciate that.
Sorry.
As you've been building your business, would you sort of stepping back and giving some advice to others that are coming along after you? What have you learned from scaling that you'd like to share? What's the one thing that you would do over and over again, and the one thing that you would absolutely never do again?
Well, first off, for scaling, I'll answer that bit first. our business, Baker's Delight, and it's called Cobb's Bread in Canada. A little regulatory change. You asked about the regulations. That was a little Canadian thing that we had to do. You have to have a profitable business to start off with. And then, as I was saying, we were able to scale and take our quantum leap through franchising. So it's not the only way to scale. You might take in venture capital. Ultimately, you might do an IPO. So for us, it was franchising. So work out what it is, your business, and make sure your business, even if it is profitable, or you can see a plan going to profitability. What I would or wouldn't do, I mean, it's like anything in business. You don't dive in and have a go, you'll never know. So I would encourage everyone to, dive in and have a go. We've made, Roger, we've made lots of mistakes, but the trick is not to keep making those same mistakes and recognize the mistakes. And then I think we were talking earlier about getting help, whether it be government agencies. I've always found them incredibly helpful, as you mentioned, Austrade, but also being prepared to pay, for smart advice. Don't be, the KPMG, some of the lawyers, their fees are eye-watering, but in the long run, they want to keep you as a client, so they can't be too eye-watering. But just to me, you've got to have a go. You've got to believe in yourself and believe in your business, and be prepared to make mistakes and be prepared to pick yourself up and persevere.
That's great. So, Teresa, there's a question that's come in around your digital health approach, the app Tend. And can you talk a little bit about that space in New Zealand? Clearly, health, aging population is just huge in every country. What is the sort of disruption in the idea of the company? What's it bringing, and how's the uptake been so far?
Okay, so New Zealand is not very corporate in its approach to health. So primary health care, and Tend is focused on primary health care, is mainly just lots and lots and lots of small practices of GPs. And then when they retire, they sell to another GP coming along. But GP salaries haven't kept pace with what specialists can earn, and the workload's increased, the funding hasn't got up. And so the average age of GPs in New Zealand is now 55. We've got this huge problem of retiring GPs. And to personalise that, what that's meant is here, where I live with my mum next door at this part of New Zealand, which is a small town, it used to be when she moved here 7 years ago, she could get in to see the local doctor in a couple of days. Now she's got to wait at least 2 weeks. So primary health care is really under stress in New Zealand. There's a lot of focus on hospital stats and hospitals and the pressure around hospitals, particularly in Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau. But in fact, there's huge problems really just dealing with the stopping getting to hospital. There's sort of the early intervention, the early support piece. So because it's not corporatized, there's no nationwide online. We were well behind Europe and America in this. So this is not an area where New Zealand has led the world. We are really behind. So Tend is revolutionary because it does offer clinics, but it also has this fantastic app, Tend Health, which means that you can either replace your GP with a doctor of ours, or you can still have a GP and then do all after hours stuff on Tend. So, and it means you can either have the same doctor all the time or the next doctor available, because GPs work, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but people get sick, the whole time. So that's never been a customer-centric model, right? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've had terrible ear infections at 6 o'clock on a Friday. Well, I'm not waiting to get antibiotics in a prescription until Monday or later. So what's different about it, of course, it's a beautiful experience. The clinics are beautiful, the app is beautiful. We've got the best tech person we could in New Zealand to build the app. And we have from the beginning been focused on equity. So we launched the app in Te Reo in Māori quite soon after we started. We have doctors speaking many languages. We're now buying GP clinics, and the first GP clinic we bought was a small clinic in Auckland doing immigration medicals. honestly, the lunch to welcome the doctors, Chinese, Indian, it was very diverse. And we won the immigration medical business to process all the Afghani refugees who came to New Zealand. It's all gone through our clinic in Auckland. So our organic growth has gone well, but we are now accelerating by buying GP practices, because when we did a capital raise among the existing shareholders, just brought on one more shareholder into a tight group, it was basically telling the world we're ready to buy, and we got lots of approaches. So we're filtering the approaches, and in fact, we had a board call this week to figure out how fast we go beyond Auckland, where should we go, etc. So we're doing both, growing organically and growing by buying, and then along the way finding sort of new pots like immigration medicals, etc. But it's really to offer a joined up service to people on their terms, not around the doctor's, preference.
That's phenomenal. Well, congratulations. You have the special touch. Absolutely. Revolutionized food at home and now health. So congratulations on that. It's amazing. Amanda, I have a question for you first, and you may go to others if you'd like to jump in. As someone with experience blending business practice and social enterprise, can you speak to some of the ways that the Australian market's responding to other environmental, social, and governance initiatives, ESG?
Yeah. So that we are definitely seeing shifts in this country in terms of, and I'm sure throughout the world, in terms of how we view Indigenous populations, how we view women participants, and our responsibility to our earth and to our very own planet where we live. So I guess that's a bit of a complex question, and I'll speak about it generally. I think from my perspective, our people have for 60,000 years sought to look after this planet and look after our own country, and that was our total responsibility as people. So it is an interesting it's an interesting environment now, and I really think that COVID has given us the opportunity to take a deep breath and think about what we're doing, and you can start. And I think we're seeing the results of that. As I said, from a social enterprise point of view, to me, it's a no-brainer. We are struggling in Australia, certainly in Western Australia, to convince our government that there is even a need for a social enterprise. Where there seems to be this real view that much of the work that social enterprise does is the responsibility of government. But and of course, government can do some of it, but they can only do so much. And just as Teresa was talking about, health in particular is an area that is really interesting to see how important it's becoming that people start to deal with grassroots issues rather than broad-based, this sort of broad brush approach to everything. And I'm sort of really hoping we'll see that change in the very near future. We're seeing the development of country ranges on country here. We're starting to see the development of, or the importance, a lot of talk in the fashion industry about who made my clothes, where are they from, what sort of fabrics are you using in them. We've got a shop. Kirikan has a shop at the Perth Qantas terminal at the Perth airport here, and the first question that we get asked almost every day is, where are they made? And what fabrics do you use? So people are becoming more and more aware of it. And I think within the next 5 years, we'll see a huge shift that requires us to respond to that. I'm just working on removing all of my packaging in my clothes as well to try and hone that down so it's not, there's not boxes and, papers being thrown away everywhere. I'm just waiting on a delivery today of my first lot of biodegradable packaging, like postage bags, which I'm really excited about. There's an Aboriginal girl in New South Wales who's painted them, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how to use those. And my next, so all of those sorts of things are happening. It's probably not happening fast enough, and it probably should have happened 20 years ago. But the fact that it's happening is good news. I'm not sure if that actually
That's great. That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other things, if you haven't heard of betterpackaging.com, this was the world's first home compostable courier packaging, and now they're making their courier packaging out of pollution, which is really phenomenal, called Plastic. So I would encourage you to look them up too, and you can actually put the designs on them, which is amazing. I also did want to just note on something that you said earlier too, which I think is quite interesting. We're just seeing, of course, massive disruption in supply chain, huge challenges, and shipping containers kind of traveling the world and traversing over and over, hard to stop in smaller places. So maybe in a way you're ahead of the curve in making this stuff locally, because this is a trend that we're starting to see too, is actually people bringing the supply chain back locally where it's rooted in communities, so we're not doing all of the shipping all over the world. So
yeah, and I'm also, like a few years ago, we were thinking of making thousands of pieces. Now I'm thinking of making hundreds, because, there's just this whole issue of, I want people to buy one beautiful piece and use it for years, rather than buy, 10, cheaper pieces and buy them and use them for 12 months or until the next trend comes through. So what we're trying to achieve is timeless pieces that you can use for the rest of your life, really. And the patterns, the designs of the clothes themselves are trans-seasonal. Throw a jacket on them or don't, whatever. Probably not well designed for the Northwest Territories of Canada, but I come from a different climate, so so we work within what we know. So yeah.
Thanks. So Leslie, same question to you. Wondering, how has there been a weaving of ESG practices into your work as a bakery? Has it influenced how you operate?
We have always had a strong community involvement, and in fact, it's not written down as part of the franchise agreement, but our best franchisees really give back to the community, which is the E, I guess, of the ESG. And I suppose the number of bread rolls or loaves that have been made for sausage sizzles and what have you is eye-watering, whether it be Australia, Canada or New Zealand. In fact, the best bakers are the ones who always say yes to the local community groups. So from that perspective, that's it. We also, from when we first started to now, the energy consumption of our machines has dropped dramatically. And I must admit, it's not been our push. It's been because our suppliers have worked to make the machines and equipment far more efficient and use far less electricity. There's a whole methodology of not just coming into the bakery and turning everything on, but you start just, again, cutting down on electricity, which is quite a big bill for us. So environment, what's the ESG? Yep. Yeah. Packaging, we've always had minimal packaging, always. And in the old days, we used to have the tissue paper and you'd roll up the bread in the tissue, like in France. But then you've got the problem of the health department as well, so you kind of can't have it both ways. So we follow health department rules, and we put our bread in paper bags or the biodegradable polymer bags. So we encourage people to bring their own bags to the bakery. It's the way it's going, and it's a smart way of doing business. One of those ones, it's right, and it's a smart way of going.
I have a very strange question that someone gave me to ask you. For the benefit of fellow Canadian participants in our session, can you tell us what a cheesy-mite squirrel is?
Okay, Canadians.
No idea.
Yeah, but Amanda knows because she eats them. So basically,
absolutely, they're heaven. They are heaven.
Uh-huh. We've grown up with Vegemite, and all little Australian children were given sandwiches with Vegemite on it, and it's a yeast extract, and it's very salty, isn't it, Amanda? And it's got a very distinct taste. Anyway, cheesy mite scroll is that it's a white dough, and then they pin it out, and then they put some Vegemite on, sprinkle, this is for Teresa, some beautiful New Zealand cheese on it. And then they roll it all up, and then they cut it up and they bake it. So it's a snack. It's a lovely, it's like a cheese and Vegemite sandwich. We make millions of them. When we went to Canada, we tried to make them in Canada. You could get Vegemite in Canada, no interest, zero interest. So there you go. Can you believe it, Amanda? Canadians don't like our cheesy white scrolls.
I know they have some weird tastes over there. Like I'm just trying to think of some of the things that that I used to eat in my days in Canada. Well, root beer for one thing, like is a very strange flavour. My partner thinks root beer tastes like medicine he had as a child. But I used to love it when I was there. So when in Rome, of course.
Yes,
But yeah, no, cheesy. I would recommend cheesy mite rolls to anyone throughout the world. They are a wonderful taste in Australia.
Acquired taste. We will come and try that out. Okay.
They are an acquired taste.
Very acquired, yes.
Yeah.
Teresa, I heard you laughing on that one. There's another question that just came through. A lot of talk tonight about the importance of grassroots movements and connections. What are some of the grassroots initiatives, either at home or around the world, that get you excited today? I'll start with you, Teresa.
Putama, and a Māori development group headed by a Māori woman. Māori Development Corporation, another Māori development group headed by a woman. Iwi governance. I talked about iwis before. Iwi means tribe, and the Confederation of Māori Tribes, the chair of that is a Māori woman, Tracy Haupapa, who's also an activator known to Vicky and I. And women in some iwi are running 70% of the tribal runanga that make up the iwi. And of the three biggest iwi in New Zealand, they're all now got CEOs who are female, wahine Māori women. And so the Indigenous women's leadership, and both for entrepreneurs and for their communities, is it's exploded in the last couple of years. And so, when CEO first decided we can't just stay so white, we thought we could go to them and say, hey, come and join our girls group. We want to invite you. And they said, well, yeah, whatever, maybe. Yeah, nah. And then I heard that most powerfully put a few months ago by Prue Kapua, who is the president of the Māori Women's Welfare League, which is another fantastic Māori women's group. And she said, when a white woman got up and said, we really want to have Māori women members, and how do we do that? And inside me I was cringing about, white woman saviour syndrome. Anyway, she said, with great mana and great poise and dignity, we don't really travel in onesies and twosies. And also, in a very nice way, we're busy doing our own thing, and we've got our own things to deal with and our own things to deal with. And she said, if you're serious, you need to come to where we are. We don't necessarily live where you are, and you need to walk together with us. And that's what we're trying to do in Global Women. That's what we're trying to do in SheEO. And as Vicky knows, Kiri Nathan, who she referenced before, who was a Wahine Māori venture from last year, often says that she knows that SheEO is authentic about diversity because there's no cultural asks. We don't say, oh, Kiri, Renta Māori, please do the opening blessing for us, which is called Karakia in Te Reo. She feels it took it on her own terms and felt okay about, taking funding, but then spending a year learning fluent Te Reo. So, gosh, where do I start? We've got so much to learn from Indigenous women, but the pressure is on them. But Rachel Tulele, who's Māori, was the chair of the business group for the recent APEC. New Zealand hosted APEC for the first time in decades, and she was the chair of the business group organising that. So at least in New Zealand, quite quickly, we've actually not got them leading their own people, but leading what used to be the white man's world.
How about you, Amanda? Do you have thoughts on grassroots movements, things that you're noticing that are coming along that you're excited about?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I get really excited about, particularly when it's dealing with sort of really personal issues. So one of the issues that impact our people all the time is funerals. We die at younger rates than much of the rest of the world, and certainly the rest of Australia. And when you live in poverty, it's hard to prepare for that all the time. And sometimes in families, they'll just come one after the other. So recently I saw the development here of a female-led funeral home that is specifically designed for our people, which is just amazing. And she will be working. This particular lady will be working on making those funerals or raising money to perform funerals for families that just can't afford to do so. So that's like that. It just hits me right in the heart every time I think about that one. We have here, as Teresa was just saying, we've got women's leadership institutes here led by one of our wonderful elders here, Dr. Richard Wally and his wife, who develop a program for our women leaders. You know, I work a lot in the perhaps not fashion so much as remote community leadership. So young girls wanting to, teaching them how to, it used to be called deportment back in the day, but it's just about, standing up and talking and walking in front of people and presenting yourself. And so those sorts of things are happening. On country foods, little businesses are opening up and developing everywhere. Might be, picking Golban tea or gubbinge or, any of the traditional foods that our people have eaten for thousands of years. And they're developing little businesses of those and keeping people on community involved in that and able to get a return financially to the communities. So that's, those sorts of things are just amazing. And I can't tell you how what a feel good it is for me to see that happening for my people, particularly in the remote communities, but all over the country. It's just wonderful things are happening everywhere, and we're starting to actually understand that we should support and love each other rather than try and drag each other down, which is very often a result of colonialism. So I love that in particular.
Yeah, it's beautiful, wise words of wisdom. Lots of emojis coming up the side here as
yes,
those beautiful comments. We've got about 4 minutes left, but I just want to. And did I cut you off, Leslie? Do you want to say something?
No, I was just saying I've got nothing further to add. Amanda's done a sterling job for the Australian team.
Stunning. Okay, so we're just going to close off now. We often get this question at the end. I'm sure you've been asked this before about what advice would you give to your younger self, to those who are coming after you? And I always answer by saying, I would never have listened to myself when I was younger. But if we were listening, Leslie, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go Teresa and then Amanda. Final words for those coming after us. You've done incredibly well in your life. Lots of success, lots of chance to sit back and reflect. What would you like to share with your younger self and those coming next?
And I do like your response, Vicky, and I'm going to use that if someone ever asks me that again. I never would have listened to her anyway. I suppose it's the advice of confidence that you are capable of doing this, and you go out and do it and don't take no for an answer. And I think it's the confidence. That's what I would say. Just have that confidence and the belief in yourself.
Thank you. Teresa, how about you?
Well, I was born with lots of confidence. So my advice to my younger self is actually, life's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't try and do it all in your 20s and get exhausted as I did. And really, that doesn't matter what you do in your 20s. There is no wrong choice. Go to university or not, work or not, travel or not, marry or not, have kids or not. Life, it gives you plenty of time to do everything. You just can't do it all between breakfast and morning tea.
That's excellent. Thank you. Amanda, final words to you.
Thank you. So my father was an old Aboriginal man who lived through a very tough time. But his favourite advice to us all was, for every every million people out there trying to make a change in their life by winning lotto, there's one out there working hard to make it happen, make that change happen. What one are you going to be? And so that stayed with me all my life. He's been gone for some years now, bless him. But that would be the best advice I'd give. It's a choice. Just as Teresa said, it's a choice you make. Are you going to make a change, or are you going to let change happen around you?
Yeah, good.
Incredible. Thank you so much, everyone. Very honored to have been spending this time with you today, to learn with you, to walk alongside you. Thank you to everyone for your great comments in the chat. Thank you to the Asia Pacific Foundation for having us today. And Christine, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you.
Vicky, Amanda, Leslie, Teresa. Wow, what an inspiring discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your trailblazing journeys with us. It's unfortunate we couldn't see Teresa too much tonight, but thank you, Teresa, for hanging in there and sticking it out even just through the audio. Another panelist tonight, Tracy Hupapa, an Indigenous person from New Zealand, unfortunately got called out at the last minute. Her story would have been very interesting to listen to too, but business comes first. She got called out on a very high level business meeting, and so she sends her regrets and sincerely apologizes to everybody. But that's business, so no problem. Your incredible experiences tonight and the prudent counsel that you provided will undoubtedly provide food for thought for so many of our aspiring women entrepreneurs who are online tonight, as they take off on their own journeys and begin to develop their own strategies for growing their businesses through the wise counsel you provided, which I hope will, whether now or later on in their journeys, include international trade diversification into Australia and New Zealand. And for our panelists, while Leslie is already in Canada with Cobbs, and I love Cobbs, I hope that, Amanda, you will become inspired today too, to think about venturing into our market as well. The unending challenges presented by the ongoing threat of COVID-19 and its variants, including the latest Omicron variant, continue to test human resilience. But as the proverb goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That is true of entrepreneurs, and especially women entrepreneurs, who, in addition to the increased responsibilities of childcare, which now includes homeschooling, elder care of aging parents that may live with them, the most vulnerable against COVID-19, and in general, household management, have had to quickly pivot from their normal business practices, which pre-pandemic may or may not have been digitized to survive this pandemic. Our mission delegates are excellent illustrations of this resilience. Many of them have not only survived the past 2 years, but some are actually thriving despite all the challenges that they're facing. So I believe that with exposure to new markets, such as Australia and New Zealand, and with help in developing their expansion strategies, they will succeed in achieving and perhaps surpassing their business goals. At least I hope so. This brings to a close day one of our virtual business mission to Australia and New Zealand. But before we call it a night, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Government of Canada for their generous contributions to this Women's Mission Series, our presenting sponsor, Air Canada, our partner, SheEO, and IndiGX for their tremendous support in pulling this together. To all our speakers tonight, many, many thanks for inspiring the delegates and the rest of the people online tonight, and the rest of us to do more to help women in business succeed. Let's hear it for all of our speakers tonight through the emojis. Tomorrow's program will be as exciting with a trilateral panel of successful Indigenous women entrepreneurs and a pitch session with our delegates who will present their value propositions to you and answer questions from the audience. So tune in at the same time tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Canada, 11 a.m. AEDT in Australia, and 1 p.m. in New Zealand, NZDT. Thank you, everyone, for your attention, and have a good rest of day, evening, and night. Tina koto katoa. Merci et bonsoir tout le monde. Thank you.